me introduce y'all. Let me introduce y'all to everyone. So this is Elizabeth and Lindsay. So they are both PMHNPs. They're both in private practice, and I think they have a wealth of wisdom to share with us too. So definitely follow their channels as well, because I think you'll get a lot of value from them. So thank y'all for joining us.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's walk into it then. So the first thing I wanted to start with was asking more about your journey. So like both of you guys, like how did you end up in this place now? Like, you know, walk us through that whole journey of where you started from, like, let's say around college time to.
I'll go. So I always knew I wanted to be a nurse, like in high school. So in college, I knew I just majored in nursing essentially right out of the gate. And so I got my bachelor's in nursing, and then I worked predominantly as an ER nurse for like 5 years. And I always had multiple jobs. So my main job was full-time in the ER as an ER nurse. And then I always had like one or two either outpatient or inpatient like psych jobs. So I was always working inpatient or outpatient in various psych units. And then I decided I always knew I wanted to work in psych. So I wanted to get the broad knowledge from the ER that I knew that I would get on, like I hate to say the medical, but you guys know what I mean, like the medical side of things. So then I wanted to go back to NP school to just have more autonomy. And so I applied to, it was a dual master's in DNP. So like the master's in nursing, specializing in the psych nurse practitioner role, and then the doctor of nursing practice degrees. So now I work outpatient in the Midwest. I see ages 5 and up, mainly ADHD, bipolar, depression, OCD, eating disorder, substance use, pretty much a little bit of everything.
Gotcha. And how long was that whole time frame for you?
The whole between the bachelor's and like schooling was like 8.5 years. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, so quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so so it sounds like you always kind of knew that you were heading in this general direction.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, pretty much from the get-go. I knew I wanted to be a nurse. I didn't know in what capacity exactly, but I kind of because I almost majored in psychology in like undergrad, but I was like, I felt like the nursing role was just a better fit. So yeah, I was always interested in psych.
Got you. So there was always that initial thought, and then, you know, once you got the experience, what kind of solidified it for you as you were getting your training?
Like while I was in graduate school or undergrad?
I mean, both. Like, what solidified for you that like psych was the direction you wanted to go in?
Really, so whenever I was an ER nurse, I saw like the stigma, and there's research to support this too. I almost did my doctoral project on like stigma from not just ER nurses, but just like the ER in general, like personnel towards psych patients. And that really bothered me. I just felt like it was a very stigmatized area of medicine, and something that I didn't see that was, you know, making leaps and bounds in the right direction. So that always made me passionate about it, to be a voice, I guess, in a way. And it also just, the brain just fascinates me. I mean, like through and through. So
yeah. So it sounds like it was the right fit.
Yeah, I love what I do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And then what about you, Lindsay? Like, how was your journey ending up here?
Yeah, so for me, I went to undergrad in Ohio, and I did not like my psychiatric nursing rotation at all. I was like, I would never work in psych, because what I was exposed to was really people who weren't getting better and dealing with co-occurring substance use disorders, and there wasn't really the resources to help them get better. So I just thought, wow, this would be a very depressing field to work in. And then I moved out to Arizona, and I started working in community health at health services through Arizona State University. And that was a really cool experience because they had multiple psychiatric nurse practitioners there. And I was able to see just the role of the Psych NP. I had never even heard about Psych NPs, and being able to see students go from not functioning and abusing substances to being able to do well in their classes was just really, really cool. So I was just fascinated by it. From then on out, I would be like, can I come in and shadow you? Even though I was supposed to be doing other things as a community health nurse, but they did mentor me and kind of helped prepare me for that road. And then I had a boss who just really challenged me and got me this like 5-year planning book and was like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Okay, well, let's start taking action steps. And I'm like, I only have like 1.5 years of experience, but I did it and I'm glad I did. And I'm really passionate about incorporating psychotherapy. That's what I focused on for my doctoral project, is dialectical behavior therapy. And so that's, a big part of my passion. I also like doing mentorship. I have a bootcamp for Psych NP students and new grads, and that's a huge passion of mine. So that's kind of a little bit about my journey.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it sounds like it was very organic for you too, because you got that community mental health experience. Like that's what solidified it.
100%. Yeah, and it's kind of come full circle because that same Psych NP I first shadowed reached out to me not that long ago, and we hadn't stayed in touch at all. So it'd been like 10 years, and she's like, "Hey, I really think you'd be great as the Arizona APNA chapter president." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So that's also kind of provided me with other opportunities. Get more involved in.
So you took it.
What'd you say?
You took the position.
Yeah.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. And so both of you guys ended up going into private practice, right?
Eventually, yeah.
Gotcha. What inspired that direction for y'all rather than any of the other areas?
I never thought I wanted to be in private practice. I felt like it would be too much responsibility on my shoulders. And so I was in community health for 7 years, in person, working with higher acuity population and a lot of co-occurring substance use. And I really liked that. And then I worked for a telehealth practice. Well, it was a hybrid practice, but the person who founded it and scaled it, sold it, had less clinical experience than I did. And I was really intrigued because I'm like, why don't you take more risks, Lindsay? So I just decided, well, what do I have to lose? I mean, if I hate it, then I can always go back to, a salaried position. But I decided to give it a try, and I really love being able to practice how I want to practice and practice integratively.
Yeah. Got you. So then it was kind of like, what you saw your inspiration from your friend and then, or your colleague, right? And then you were like, you know what, I can do this too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He was like, do you want to create a course for me? I'll pay you hourly. And I was like, man, I could create my own course. Or, I just started my wheels started spinning. And then I saw that there were other psychiatric providers on social media. That was a totally new concept to me. And I got on, and that's kind of what progressed to a lot of the mentorship and consulting too, as well, the visibility aspect.
Yeah. And so we'll definitely table on that because I wanted to ask you about that too. But yeah, so what about you, Elizabeth? How did you end up getting into private practice as opposed to other areas?
So my full-time role, so it's technically private practice because it's not my business. So it's a Vanderbilt grad. I work for another Psych NP. So we work in an independent practice state. So it's a Psych NP, and there's a couple other Psych NPs that work at the private practice. That's where I did some of my clinical hours, and I did clinical at a lot of different, I was in Alaska, doing serious mental illness ACT team work. And then I did community mental health out there. And then I did an eating disorder rotation at a children's clinic, and then substance use rotation somewhere else, inpatient, outpatient detox, et cetera. And I really liked the practice because of I don't know, I feel like it's my own business because I can set my own hours. I essentially can choose what patients I see, what patient population I see. I can work from home, I can go in the office. But it's also nice because I have other team members. There's some other nurse practitioners that work at the practice. So we always on Wednesdays will have a weekly lunch or a meeting, a clinical meeting. So I have that collaboration there. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So then for you, it's you became part of you had the autonomy of a private practice, but you also have the the group cohesiveness of a group practice too. And so you're not just isolated in your silo all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, because a lot of people definitely experience that. For example, like one of the NPs in our program, so she tells me that, so she's in Washington and she's very isolated. And so because of that, she's like, I'm the only one there and I'm taking care of all these issues by myself. And so it sounds like, you know, you're not having that, right? Because you have that collectiveness.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just very, very cool. And so what led you guys to join social media then?
I saw a post on a Facebook group by another Psych NP who said, hey, I'm on Instagram. I have 5,000 followers. People are constantly asking me about mentorship. They'll pay for mentorship. You know, shoot me an email if you're interested in being added to this list. And so I did that, and I just decided to try it out, and I felt really silly just going live, and it would be like my mom on there, but
Yeah.
just like whatever. And then I did feel really isolated at that time, very isolated. And when I was in community health, I was really close with my coworkers and my mentors, very close. And then I had a baby, I had a traumatic brain injury. So it was like, I was struggling, you know, I wanted to be more connected, and that was, an avenue to be able to do that. So I just started meeting on Zoom, having coffee chats with a lot of Psych NPs and getting to know their journeys. And it just kind of reignited that passion for mentorship that I had, because I had precepted a lot when I was in community health. And I love that. I always felt like I was learning so much from them and vice versa. So yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. So you saw the post and then that's like all clicked it for you. How long ago was that?
That was probably 3 years ago.
Okay. Gotcha.
I before that, I was like, when I was working for somebody, I would have been really nervous to go on social media. But I think it took me like not working for anybody to feel like, well, what's the worst that could happen? I'm just kind of representing myself at this point, and it was kind of liberating in a way.
Yeah. It's so funny. I had this same experience. So I got on social media a couple of years ago, and so I was in residency at the time. And so I was always afraid that if I say something wrong, like I'm going to get kicked out of residency and then I'm screwed. Like that was the fear I had for years and years. And so I always kept things safe. Like there was a video I remember that went viral, but I had said the wrong thing, like, and it went viral, but like basically I'd made it, like it wasn't as clear as it could have been in the video. And, so even though it was getting a lot of attraction, I took it down because I was like, oh no, what if my residency program finds out? And,
Yeah.
now it's like, well, you know, I don't care. Like people can think whatever, right? Because it's that peace of mind you get when you work for yourself.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I wasn't prepared for that because I lived in fear for so long of like irrational anxiety about I'm going to lose my license for, you know, being unsafe, and I won't even realize I was being unsafe, and the board's going to call me. And
Yes.
it was kind of to go, you know what? I'm a safe provider and an ethical provider. I get case consultation. If I get called in front of the board, then I feel good about like what I've done, you know?
Right.
So.
Right. The game is changing. People are online. And in my opinion, if you're not online, then you are behind. Like, just like, it's like if you didn't adopt Google 20 years ago and you never used it.
Yeah. The marketing potential on social media is really surprising, you know, for businesses. So the organic reach has been really cool.
Yeah, it's not even just marketing though. It's also the trust that people develop with you. Like even just like patients that you work with. I've had, patients seek you out, right? And they automatically trust you as opposed to when it's just like a blank new visit. Because like, you know, when I signed up for, like I was looking for a different practice, like, 6 months ago. And there I felt like I could try a lot harder to earn their trust as opposed to when I get clients from social media. They're already bought in. Like I don't have to sell anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. See, this is funny. We were talking about this earlier, actually. I really don't get a lot of patients from my social media. I think I've gotten one, but I've also like not kind of leveraged my channels that way for some reason. When I first started, it was a private practice page, and it felt weird to me, and I just naturally started talking to other providers. So I haven't like had a lot of patients come to me, but Elizabeth has people finding her from her socials. So
Yeah. So what do you think that you do differently?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's because of like my location. I don't really know how patients are and I've had like current patients be like, I saw you on social media the other night, and it took me a second to like realize that that was you like on there talking. I was just telling Lindsay earlier, we were texting, and I was like, I think there's been like 5 or 6 over the last couple months that have intentionally said that to me that were current patients, and then there's been at least 3 or 4 over the last like couple of months as well that for our practice, it'll say like, where did you hear about us? And it's like or therapists, and they'll like say who or whatever, and people have literally written TikTok on there. So I don't know really what I'm doing differently. I don't know if it's I don't know, because I feel like Lindsay, we talk about a lot of the same. I mean, I'm like very med focused, just like what are the medications, how do they work, what are they FDA indicated for, you know, what are common side effects, etc. And maybe like differential diagnoses and things like that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's people see your expertise, like the content you make attracts a certain type of person. So people see your expertise, and you know, I'm not saying that you're not an expert at all, right? What I'm saying is that like people see that expertise, and then that's what they're seeking out. And different patients are attracted to different providers too. So I always feel like it's not a competition, like people might want us to believe it is. There's more than enough patients out there for all of us to thrive. So I think anyone who has a scarcity mentality like that is it's not a good look on them.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your journey too.
Yeah. So what part, like social media or psychiatry or
Social media, mentorship, going from the Amen clinics to kind of your own thing.
Yeah, sure. So basically I got on social media a couple years ago, and this was when COVID had hit. And so I went from playing kickball outside to like socializing to pretty much just spending all day, all night at home. And that's when I got really into YouTube. And then on YouTube, I started getting into self-development content, like how to dress better, how to have better hair. Like I learned how to blow dry my hair, which I'd never done in my life until I was like 27 years old. I learned skincare, which I'd never done until I was 27 years old. Like I learned personal grooming and eyebrows and, you know, facial hair, all of that stuff. And what I realized was that these people had made videos, like I was all from YouTube. These people made videos that changed my life. But I'm never going to meet these people. And so that got me thinking. I was like, well, instead of me telling this patient, okay, Zoloft has these side effects, instead of telling me this patient the same thing over and over, I could just make one video and then it goes viral. And like, you know, I can help 1 million people with that. And so that's what led me to social media. And then I knew that in Amen Clinic, so they were doing a lot of that marketing stuff too. So I really wanted to join, really wanted to learn that. And then I did. And then, you know, I had some disagreements later on, especially with leadership. And so then it felt like, okay, I've already been building this platform. This is like I just need to go all in. And so I went all in for that, and then started doing the lives. And then on the lives, I started having a lot of NPs actually reach out. They would say, hey, I'm an NP and no one taught me this. Thank you for your channel because I'm learning from this stuff. Like, and I kept doing that. I kept seeing the same comment over and over again. And so then that started like looking more into coaching. And then we had, I think like 20 or 30 signups in a week.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, like there's something here, right? And so I started talking to my students more, and that's when I started finding out that, okay, like the education is like not standardized, right? A lot of them saying they felt like they learned nothing after graduating. A lot of them were like, yeah, I had to find my own collaborator after I graduated. Like no one taught me, or my collaborators didn't do anything. They just take my money each month. my first job was a complete waste. They just threw 30 patients at me and just expected me to like plow through them. I had no support. And then I started realizing like this is a problem. And I think that the schools are, quite frankly, just like scamming you. They're just taking your money. They're just pumping out NPs and not giving you the formal training that you need to be successful. And that's the difference I realized from psychiatry education, is because like our education is very standardized. We have 4 years of residency. Every rotation is planned out. I knew exactly what I was doing month to month. All the patients we were getting, every case was staffed, supervised by an attending psychiatrist. And so by the end of those 4 years, like I felt very confident in my training. I'm like, okay, I've seen a lot, obviously still learning, but I've seen a lot. And like, I feel like I've established a good base. But then what I was just seeing in my students was that this is not the case. And so I was like, okay, like we have to change this because, you know, this is a problem. And then that's what led me on this all journey. And yeah, I think we need to fix the system. I think we need to fix the NP education system if we really want to make a difference in psychiatric knowledge and like helping patients with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a big shift during the pandemic, and just with a lot of the more like for-profit schools popping up and accepting more and more people into their programs and not being equipped to provide them with quality preceptor opportunities. And, you know, I know that's something that Elizabeth and I are passionate about, is kind of just elevating the professionalism of psych NPs and advocating for better education, standardized education. So,
like, I'll tell you a truth that doctors will not admit to you. If I meet another psychiatrist, I automatically assume that, like, I don't have to question their clinical knowledge. Like, I assume it's there. Like, we can shoot the shit. If I'm interviewing them, it's like every interview I've had, I've never had one question, a clinical question, because my knowledge base is assumed. But my students, even just yesterday, I was asking them, and they said that, yeah, they've had to go through clinical scenarios, mechanisms of action, drugs, clinical cases, in all their interviews. Because people are assuming that their knowledge is not good. And so they have to prove themselves, whereas I don't have to prove myself. And so I think that is the difference there in the education and the perception that doctors and MDs will have. So I think that if you want to get treated as, right, you want to have that respect, right, like from providers, from patients, then the only way to do that is by leveling up and, you know, by one, changing this education system. But secondly, is what I tell my students is that level up to become such an excellent provider that no one can doubt your clinical skill.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me more about your businesses and like your mentorship, your coaching. Like, what is it that you guys do?
My mentorship program is it's a boot camp. It's a transition to practice program. It's approved for continuing ed, and a lot of it is live coaching and case consultation. And we also have like a WhatsApp group where they can ask questions for more kind of immediate responses. And yeah, I've had, I think, 150 Psych NPs go through it. And people feel a lot more confident after they go through it. And we talk about more than just prescribing and med management. We talk about interviewing, negotiation, different things like that. So I love it. And it's led to other cool collaborations when it comes to like course creation. So that's exciting. So yeah, I spend a lot of my time doing education. I did co-found the Psych NP network as well. There's a membership community for Psych NPs.
Yeah.
Stepped away from that, and I'm really focusing on my boot camp and my private practice.
Yeah, gotcha. And then in your boot camp, what is the, like, if let's say a student goes through it, what's the outcome that you want for them?
increased in clinical confidence. We have like a baseline test that they take as far as like readiness to practice. So that's one of the things. But I also just want like I'm a very big people person, so like to connect people with other opportunities. Like one of my mentees I connected with, I don't know if you know who Dr. Mike Ma is. He's a social media psychiatrist in LA, and I was able to kind of do like a letter of recommendation for a position he's hiring for, and it's like her dream job. So I also like want to help them build their brands and kind of not be scared to take a risk as far as stepping out on social media, being visible on LinkedIn and some of these different platforms. It's kind of a new way of thinking, and I don't think everybody always sees the value. So that's part of what I talk about in the boot camp as well.
Gotcha. So you're combining a lot of social media, clinical, practice-based savvy too.
Yeah, it's kind of like whatever people are asking me. Like to your point, that's kind of the boot camp came about, was just like getting the same questions on repeat. And I try to kind of create an offering and then kind of modify it based on the needs of the people that I'm serving, kind of thing. I'm very big on like, give me feedback and give me constructive criticism. So it's been a work in progress, and yeah, it's been good.
And that's the only way you learn, right? Is by keep on getting that feedback, and that shows, right? Because I think a lot of the issue that we're running into is that other providers are not willing to listen to feedback, right? Whether it's other NPs who might be too arrogant, they feel like they know everything, or as I'm experiencing, psychiatrists who feel that, okay, we should gatekeep all of this, and like people should not be exposed to this knowledge that NPs should not be practicing at all. Like I've gotten comments like, let them sink, and like stuff like that, right? So it's a definite problem for sure. So it's cool that you're actively trying to address it.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I'm also working with Dr. Carlat on a psychiatric interviewing course and exploring different like AI platforms for simulations and things. So we'll see if anything comes out of that, but I'm excited about it.
No, that's really cool. You're very entrepreneurial minded.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. What about you, Elizabeth?
With what specifically?
Like about your business, private practice, like what kind of stuff are you doing?
So yeah, I have several. So my main job, like with the private practice, I'm, like I said, seeing patients 5 and up. I am currently working on, I do like publications. So I published in the Journal of Emergency Nurses. I'm currently working on publishing something we're doing, microdosing. I don't know if I can say the K word on here, but that in my practice with a pilot of 10 people. So I'm working on getting that published. And then something about just like the current political climate and how that's like impacted mental health and like outcomes that I'm seeing with the current political climate that's currently en route. So I do like a lot of publishing on the side, but like through my private practice where I'm seeing those patients. I'm on the board of the APNA, not president like Lindsay, but maybe one day. And then I just started kind of my own side thing where I see patients pro bono for people that can't afford, like maybe they're, like community mental health wait times are too long, or they can't afford like cash pay for private practice. Because at my practice now, like if they can't afford it, like the copay, for example, and they have commercial insurance, because we take most commercial insurances, we'll make the copay like $25 or whatever, so that they can still we run their insurance and then we can still see them. But there was still like that gap there. So I'm currently working on building out that kind of side practice that I have now. I'm on faculty at my alma mater, basically all the things I do.
Yeah, gotcha. So a lot of research based, a lot of academic stuff. So it sounds like that's like where a lot of your interest and focus is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there, let me ask you guys, if there's any kind of big change that you would make, let's say the number one change you could make in the field, what would that be?
Standardization, I think, of our education.
I think that'd be mine too. Cause it's like, I feel like it gives like Lindsay and I, who went to really good schools, I think that it gives, and I'm not saying that you can't be a good provider and come out of a degree mill school. Like, that's not true, because I know some of them, but your chances are just less, in my opinion. And also, it's like, I have a friend who went to a degree mill school, and like, I was working my ass off studying for psychopharm. I mean, it was the hardest class I've ever taken. And she was like, "Oh, I barely study. All my tests are essentially on Quizlet." And I'm like, how is this like okay? You know? So I think that, and I just feel like it gives other NPs a bad name. And I feel like the skepticism is warranted. I really do, with some of the, I really feel that it is. And so, but it's like, there are people that know what they're doing, but then you, like you said earlier about how, you know, like your intelligence or like your knowledge is assumed and you don't have that as NPs. And Lindsay and I didn't know that there was such NP hate or skepticism until I got on this platform. I had no clue whatsoever. And then I was like, oh, but that makes, like, I always knew that there needed to be standardization for the NP program. And that's why I went to the school that I did, because I wanted to know what I'm doing. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you a story. So I was in my third year of residency, and basically there's a new patient that came in, and we were discussing the case as a group, all the residents were. And the patient was on Cymbalta, like 20, Zoloft 25, and some other SSR, maybe like Prozac or something like that. Prozac 20 or 30 milligrams. And I remember specifically like seeing this regimen, and what we all saw it, and one of my co-residents goes, "So who's the NP who prescribed that?" We had no idea. Like, I literally had no clue, but that was the assumption, right? And so that's what a lot of providers and a lot of MDs will assume of NP education. So you know, it's definitely an uphill battle and a bias that I think people who are prepared, who are excellent providers, face. And like, it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Also, Elizabeth has a digital product that's really cool, a great resource that I think Psych NPs could benefit from. I don't know if it's available yet, but yeah.
It will be. I'm working on it. I know Lindsay will kick me into shape here this week, I'm sure, getting it listed somewhere.
I just love good resources and support.
I just want to say, someone had said not everybody can afford to go to the school or whatever. And, you know, I just want to clarify, like, my education was very expensive. However, the difference between my education and somebody else that went to a degree mill program wasn't that different. It, like, we went through the cost. I remember going through the cost of it. And for the difference in education, like, I was light years ahead of other people that graduated from these degree mill schools, and that was because of my education. And it wasn't enough of a delta to justify it. That's just my opinion, though. Like, I think it was worth the extra, like $20,000 whenever you're going to be making that back in, you know, 2 months as a psych NP. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gotcha. So it sounds like you are also recognizing that this is a problem in the field too, the inequality of education and the preparedness of graduates once they leave.
Yeah.
Even, you know, amongst even psychiatric physicians assistants, you know, and their education standardized, and they get a lot of preparation as it relates to interpreting research and things like that. So yeah.
CRNAs too, their standardization is better. Like CRNA, it's just like the NP, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think makes it different then?
I don't know. I think, well, like I know that CRNAs, how many hours do they have to have, Lindsay? A lot more than NPs do. I believe, and I think that there's just more standardization there. And I also think that for CRNAs, you have to be in person at most schools, is my understanding. And for a lot of these schools that are just completely online, you never have to be like in person. You never have to do like on-campus intensives. Like, I had to be on campus 3 times a year. I didn't have to relocate, for people saying on the comments that they can't relocate. I didn't have to relocate. I just had to be on campus 3 times a year to do on-hands intensives and do it in front of my professors, like, you know, in sim, on video, all these things, so that they could assess and make sure that I knew what I was doing. You know.
Yeah. So it's, and is it like how are these programs allowed to exist legally or ethically? Like, how do they cross all these, I guess, the checks and balances?
I think like they'll have a list of, you know, places where people can do their clinicals, and that's kind of like them providing the clinical rotations. I don't know, but I just know that, yeah, they're definitely not finding quality clinical placements, and that leaves Psych NPs scrambling and going, okay, who can I find? I'll pay you. And then I'm not against paying for a rotation if it's a quality rotation, but some of the rotations are very like multiple NPs on a call and more observational, and we really need to get in there and do the interviewing and the questions. I just met with a mentee today who is a midwife on a reservation here in Arizona, and she drove all over the state to get quality rotations. She drove 10 hours per week to get those quality rotations, but it is kind of like on the NP student to decide to, you know, try to put in full effort and not just kind of take like a shortcut route that might be easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the same, also I'll give you the counterpoint. So, for example, in medical education, when we start our 3rd year, basically that's our clinical year where we spend rotations in OB-GYN, surgery, you know, neurology, psych, etc. My schedule was laid out every single day for the year. I knew exactly where I was going. It was all in the same hospital system. I didn't have to search for any preceptor. It was basically, okay, this month is your psych month. You go to this preceptor or you go to this clinical site. This person's going to supervise you. This evaluation will be done. Next month, you go to this supervision, et cetera, et cetera. So like, it's literally all laid out step by step for you, for us. And so it's not like we're scrambling or searching or in danger that our education will happen. Like, we know for a fact that we paid for it. And so it will happen.
Yep, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, thank you for sharing that. Something else I wanted to ask about too was about bias. So something my students have told me is that they felt like, for example, in the clinical interview setting, they felt a lot of bias against them for their position. In the clinical interview setting, so basically when they're getting interviewed for a job, but also from patients, when patients will say that, hey, I'm paying a full copay, I want a physician. So is that something that you've experienced, or is it something that you're aware of in the field? Like, what are your thoughts and experiences?
I'm sorry, you want me to go?
I've heard of it. I've never experienced it because it's very clear on our practice page, like who works there. So it's like, I don't know about in the hospital. I have never seen it, but I've never experienced it. Lindsay, I don't know if you have.
A handful of times in the 10 years I've been practicing. And it's usually like a patient's upset about not getting what they want, or like it's usually a pretty specific situation, not like before they even came in and saw somebody. But I will say, like, what I've learned through my mentorship is, like, Arizona being a full practice authority state, I don't really know what other factors play into it, but I feel that psychiatrists and psych NPs work very collaboratively here, and it's generally a very supportive, positive environment. But I have heard from mentees in other states where they have faced more challenges that way.
Yeah, got you. And this is a question actually that came up in our community yesterday, so I'll bring it to you. So what do you feel is the ideal role of the psych NP in the system? Do you feel if it's like, okay, they work side by side, just treating different patients? Do you feel as if it's like NPs work under supervision from a psychiatrist? how do you feel the ideal role should be?
Go ahead, Elizabeth. I got distracted reading these comments.
I would say I feel like I don't remember where it was, but there was in a border state to me, there was legislation that was being passed that for full autonomy, like full practice for the state. And two psychiatrists that came and talked to our practice. They were talking about, I don't know, some new research or something, had talked about how they had drove 6 hours to go and speak on nurse practitioners' behalf to give nurse practitioners full practice authority because, well, one of the biggest reasons was because there's just not enough psychiatrists. I don't know if it's, you may have better insight on why there's not enough. Maybe there's too many patients or not enough people going to med school. But essentially there was one psychiatrist per 4,000 people. Like, so there's just not enough. So I feel like nurse practitioner's job and PA, whatever, is to bridge that gap and create like less barriers to care, like create more providers and more access to care, and working alongside collaboratively with everyone. Mm-hmm. It should be a teamwork across the board.
So the question was, what's like the ideal setup for a psych NP? Is that what you said?
Like, what's our role, like in healthcare? Like, what do you like? Yeah, what's our role?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is definitely a part of it, and then I think another big piece of it is getting structured like case consultation. You know, I think that that's something that's like missing. And I think it's just a huge piece of like that first, I mean, really just like forever when you're practicing, you know, and I think just the fact that there's so much telehealth and people are out there kind of on their own, not necessarily getting that. I think that should just be kind of like more of like assumed required, like what's your case consultation, you know, plan. So.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, because there isn't one, right? It's all just dependent on what site you go to, and hopefully it's a good one.
Right. Yeah. Like for me in 2015, when I graduated, I was dead set on like, I won't accept a position where I don't have mentorship. I would have never gone into private practice as a new NP. I was way too insecure about just my clinical skills. And so when I met my boss, she's like, you know, we can meet an hour per week, but she poured into me a lot more than that. I was in her office several times a day probably and calling her, and she was totally supportive, but that's like more and more rare, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect?
What is it?
Dunning-Kruger effect. Basically, the whole thing, it means that the more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. Mm-hmm. And it's really the danger is of the inexperienced provider who doesn't realize that they don't know stuff. And then the problem in psychiatry, unlike something like surgery, is that if you make a mistake in surgery, the issue is immediately obvious. But in psychiatry, people can be on triple antidepressants, subtherapeutic doses, antipsychotic side effects, like stuff like that for months, or inadequate diagnosis for months without recognizing that that's a problem. And then the issue is that if the provider is inexperienced, they don't know that that's what the issue is, because they don't know what they don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's where, again, it comes all to the standardization of education, right? Like that's the biggest problem that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So no, I think it's really cool. You guys are taking active roles to try to fix this, and being on a platform like this, it takes courage because you put yourself out there, you put yourself to hate. People get negative comments and stuff, right? And it can affect your mental health. You're really putting yourself out there. So I think it's cool that you're doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So, was there anything else you wanted to cover? Any of you, or any comments you wanted to give?
I think off the top of my head. What about you, Elizabeth?
Do you see in your MD circle a lot of NP hate? Like, would you say there's more hate than not? I'm just curious. Like, what do you see?
I would say it's 50-50. So, for example, like so my program got posted on the Doctor subreddit yesterday, and then so I'm not sure if you're not familiar. Basically, it's not a doctor. It's a subreddit on Reddit where basically it's physicians bashing NPs. Like that's literally what it is. And so someone posted it, and then they found out my Reddit identity, and so this morning I got a notification that I got banned from the subreddit. Without like, I've never said a negative comment to them in my life, but so I got banned. And so that sub has 63,000 followers, or like like Redditors following it. So it's a definite thing. If you look at one of the comments on my or if you look at the comments on that thread, like that will give you a good indication of what's happening. This is what a lot of physicians do think, actually. So, I mean, I think there's many who think that no, NPs are great and they work well with them. But there's definitely an uphill battle that you are fighting.
Yeah.
Like there's no doubt about that in my mind.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, meeting next week. So it's, and I fully expect to encounter some psychiatrists who will say, "What are you doing, coaching NPs? You should be ashamed of yourself. You are debasing your profession as a physician."
Yeah, I've heard the APA is pretty, like, just generally speaking, kind of has that outlook. Do you know who Mike Asback is at all? Okay, he's in New York, and he's a psychiatric physician's assistant, and he's like a liaison between like psych PAs and the APA. But yeah, he's had trouble really kind of making headway. So,
do you think it would be better, like from the MD standpoint, if our standardization was better? Or do you think that that's just like, it doesn't matter if you're a nurse practitioner, then you didn't go to medical school, therefore you're like inadequate to...
So that's a good question. For example, when I meet another psychiatrist, I don't doubt their clinical skill. Like, it's like, I know that they've gone through this journey. So I already assume that there's a baseline level of skill there. Mm-hmm. With an NP, it's like anything's up for grabs. They could be the most amazing ever, or they could be absolute beginner or terrible who just went into psych because it was telehealth and it was easy, quote unquote easy, which I have heard a lot of. So I think that I know better because I'm educated, I'm on the social media and stuff, but the average MD has no clue. And so to answer your question, I think that standardization would definitely be like the next step that we can take for sure, because it would create a lot more trust.
Yeah.
For any members of your profession now and going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Lindsay and I were just talking about today about making the test harder, like the ANCC tests, like so people that are graduating that don't know what they're doing, like shouldn't be able to pass the test. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a first step, and our director of our program talked about that a lot. Like, he actively advocates to make the test harder, like write harder test questions. So you have to know what the hell you're doing if you're going to be taking this test and passing it, Like, it shouldn't be a cakewalk. Like, in my opinion, it is. I think it's, I thought it was easier than NCLEX.
It was.
So,
I mean,
like, light years easier than NCLEX, which is scary,
Mm-hmm. Because I didn't pass some of the nursing undergrad, like HESI tests that we had that were like, I don't know what they were, preliminary tests. Yeah, those were hard. But this test, it
was ridiculously easy.
Right. Yeah. And I think it speaks to the mentality, like let's just push them through, because then once they're there, right, you're not your responsibility anymore.
Right. What's the conversation that you hear about like psych PAs versus psych NPs, like in your circles of psychiatrists and whatnot?
So PAs follow the medical model, right? So they're trained as medical providers first. And I think their role is a lot more structured in that. So I know that the PA has received a lot of medical foundational knowledge that I have, and I also know that their role is more clear. Like it's usually their initial was physician assistant, right? I know now they're rebranding to physician associate, but the original was physician assistant. So that role was very clear. But now, if we have an NP, they come from a nursing background, which is a different skill set than from being a clinician, right? Like, I'm not debasing it. It's just a different skill. It's a different role. And so then when you try to transition from being a non-provider to being a provider, a lot of people say that it's done too quick without the proper rigorous training that other medical professionals go through.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer the question?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought, but I was just curious.
Yeah,
that's the
I think any like a nurse practitioner in general that has some common sense is for what we're talking about, like making standardization, like making the test harder, making there be more clinical hours. I don't think that there's not enough. I don't think there's enough clinical hours. Just all these things that we're talking about. Like any nurse practitioner I talk to talks about the need for standardization, but it's just a matter of like getting us there.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest barrier holding that back?
The accessibility of ease to get into these online schools. Like I said, I have a friend that went and she didn't have a very good GPA. She didn't really. Oh, also another thing that attracted me to the school that I went to, I had to have an interview. That's getting taken away from a lot of schools, like a face-to-face Zoom interview. That is something that really attracted me to the program too. Schools that guarantee and find your clinical placement is hard to come by. And I don't think that people that are applying to schools really realize how important it is to find a school that you don't have hundreds of people in your cohort, that you should be on campus once, like to do on-campus stuff in front of professors, like something to have some standardization in the clinical hours. Like it's basically just, it's up for grabs, find whoever you need to find to get your clinical hours done. Doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter where they are. So I think just I hate to say the word accessibility of the online schools, but just how easy it is to get in and how easy it is to just do it, like kind of on your own time, which can be good, but also it's a huge downfall, Like you shouldn't be teaching yourself how to prescribe medications for people's brains. Like, sorry, but that's just my opinion.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. And then there's that perception that people feel like psych is easy. Like it's easy, you just work telehealth, you just work it from home. It's casual, it's chill. It requires a different skill set.
Yeah, no, it does for sure.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, awesome. Anything else you guys wanted to mention we didn't cover?
I mean, let's see here. I feel like there was something.
Yeah, if not, I was thinking that we could, I know you guys might have to go, right? So thank y'all for being here. Or we could just go through some of the comments too, because I know this is where I usually open up Q&A and then go through some of the comments. So it's up to y'all.
Sounds good.
Okay, so you want me to maybe list out some questions and then you guys can answer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So chat, now is your time to ask questions. So thank you for listening. I hope it has been valuable and helpful. So now is your chance to ask questions here. Dem said psych is very subjective. There's no specific guideline to follow. Research is very behind. And that's the thing, right? Psych is not an algorithmic field. It's not like, oh, their A1C is 7. Okay, they have diabetes. Okay, you put them on metformin or insulin. It's not like that. It's a lot more subjective.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The DSM is just like cluster of symptoms, essentially, like putting a name to a cluster of symptoms. So,
Right. Exactly. And that's I think a big problem in the psychiatric system as well too. It's not biological brain location based. It's very like, here's a symptom, here's a treatment for it.
Mm-hmm.
Inspired to Education says, or Action says, PA education standardized was an inch deep and a mile wide. NP specialized
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know about what the psych or the PA training looks like. I wouldn't even have the first clue what their training looks like.
Yeah. At least NPs do a fellowship version of schooling, doing post-grad certificate programs.
I didn't get a residency, but I've known psych NPs to seek out residencies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know, like the VA has one. I know other places. I have a friend. I think it maybe Penn or somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's several.
Yeah. One of my students, he works at the VA, and so he did a VA residency, and then you worked at the VA right after.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Experience for him?
Pardon me? Yeah, he said it was great. Yeah. Yeah, he said it was great. But one of the things that he said was that he said he was jealous of the residency that that we got to have. This was 1 year. So Ryan asked, do any of you believe addiction is a disease?
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
I mean, I have to say like yes and no. Like yes and no.
I agree with that. Yeah. So Ryan, if you want to learn more about addiction, so I just had an interview with an addiction psychiatrist, Dr. Mohammed Adil, yesterday. So that's on YouTube. Check it out. I think there's another person who's poaching. There's another person posting about PSSD. So I had an interview with Dr. Yosef a few days ago. That's also on YouTube. So that's where that question will be answered. So this is more about PMHP, education, and that nursing journey. So both PMHP, where did you learn the most after your RN? That's a good question.
Wait, what did it say?
It says both PMHNP, where did you learn the most after your RN?
Like after we graduated from school, like RN school, or like after we graduated with our Psych NP?
I assume Psych NP.
Carlat report, right, Lindsay?
Yes, we are big Carlat fans, non-biased psychiatric education. Yeah, it's stuff is like the best in my opinion.
I read it religiously.
And I didn't discover it until like 5 years into practice, which is just kind of ridiculous, but
So they never.
I will say I did use the psychiatric interviewing book. I just didn't really realize like it was Carlat. You know what I mean? Until I got like
you were sitting on a gold mine and you didn't even know.
Exactly.
Yeah, and now you work with them now, right? You said you're developing something.
Yep, we're in the process of developing a course.
Oh, nice. What's the course on?
Psychiatric interviewing.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. You read Carlat every day in the PMH program. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I don't really see too many relevant questions. I see a lot of arguments. I've met so many.
We do. Lindsay and I knew. We were like, there's gonna be some arguing in the comments. We knew.
That's okay. We like arguments. We like.
Yeah, it can be very divisive on social media, especially. So it's nice when I'm able to connect with other psychiatrists and we can kind of like, or psych PAs or psych NPs, and just model that like professionalism and that we can work collaboratively for the good of the patient, you know, because.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. What are psych NPs' opinions on psychiatrists?
Well, it's funny you said that because I think a lot of us have a lot of respect for psychiatrists, but one of the comments I saw about your program specifically was like, another psychiatrist trying to monetize on NP education or something like that. In one of our forums where people are mainly saying really positive things about your program, and like that's why it's being shared multiple times. But you know, that's kind of why I brought that up too. I think that we can be. I see somebody saying they left the PMHNP group on Facebook. Yeah, psych NPs can also play a part in that kind of like divisiveness, and I think that not every psychiatrist views us like that, and I don't think that we should just make assumptions about psychiatrists in general. So
Yeah. No, so I understand that, right? I think that every good change in the world, so let's face it, we know that government's not going to make any changes because there's no incentive for a government to make a change, right? Have you ever seen a government website? Like just like any kind of government website. Like, it's always crap. Why is it always crap?
I never thought about it.
Because there's no incentive to improve.
Yeah.
Right? So similarly, the government is not going to fix this problem. It's only entrepreneurs, people who are passionate, who are business oriented. That's what's going to fix the problem.
Yep.
Right? And so that's kind of what you're doing. Yeah,
right. Yeah, and there's it's a huge systemic issue. So it's like we could have all kinds of coaching programs and mentorship programs and still have there be a huge need, you know. But I agree with you. I think just like more voices, more visibility, like talking about it, but with the monetary incentive, I do think that that's a huge barrier.
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? But that applies to anything, right? It's kind of like, well, are we taking advantage of patients because we charge for our services?
Right. And if your patients get better, then they don't see you anymore and they don't pay you. So are you incentivized to like not really help them get better? Like,
yeah.
Right. So I think there's always going to be shit either way. I've learned to just embrace it because, you know, that's what comes with social media. That's what comes with the game. So I'm okay with it.
Yeah, no, same. I like talk about the medications I take, which is something that I didn't totally realize the implications of it before I did it. But, you know, there's positive and negative out there, but I'm like, I know kind of my why. So I'm like, it's not to say it's not hard sometimes to read some of the comments or hurtful, but I think going back to your why is important.
Yeah, exactly. Every successful person I've run into, especially on social media, they all say the same thing. They're like, yeah, I don't read the comments. Like, I just keep going. People in real life are nice. It's just the internet is the hate and the cesspool, and everyone gathers.
Oh yeah. I'm on Reddit and it's like, oh, all these Psych NP influencers and what are these mentorship programs? And like people have sent me those and I'm like, please don't send me these. This isn't good for my mental health.
Exactly. Yeah. But no, I think this is a good place to end it. So thank you all for being here. So everyone please follow their channels. They're very influential in the field. And I think y'all are doing good work. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Yeah, thanks for advocating for us on Noctur and all of the channels. We appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Well, I'm banned now, so I can't do anything about that.
Tried.
Yeah, we tried. But awesome. Yeah. Let's talk soon.
Okay. Sounds good. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, perfect. So I hope that live was helpful. Basically, my goal with all these live sessions, is to just share different perspectives from different healthcare providers. So we had Dr. Yosef on sharing his thoughts on anti-psychiatry and some of the movement against that. We had an addiction psychiatrist. We had one of my PMHP students on yesterday or 2 days ago. Tomorrow we're going to have another psychiatrist on as well. He's more of an academic psychiatrist, so we're going to be doing that. And so I'm definitely happy that you're here listening to all this. And we'll do the Q&A sessions for sure too. But other than that, so if you are a Psych NP, right, you really enjoyed this and you really want to learn from me, and as a psychiatrist, right, you want to learn some of the stuff I've learned in residency, you want to feel confident, capable as a provider, and you've seen the problems in the Psych NP education system, then definitely look at joining our program. We've had over 120 members join in the past 2 months, so that tells you how how much of a need there is and how big it really is. And, people are staying too, so it tells you how valuable they're finding it. And yeah, so, you can definitely check that out, or you can just send me a message on that. Let me see if there's like yeah, so you can just send me a message about that, or you can just see it in my bio. And if you're a patient and you want to book a consult with me to work together, best way to do that is also in my bio as well. Just send me a message. Otherwise, yeah, I shall see you tomorrow.